Hello, hello. Ah, I forgot to. Ah, here we go. It's been a few weeks. I forget how to stream, I swear. How is everyone doing today? I'm doing good. Didn't have the best sleep last night, but I made up for it by sleeping most of the day.
Hi, butt spot.
Hi, butt spot. Gonna try draw? How's my testicles? They are gone. They are in the bio waste pile somewhere. No, what really kept me up most of the night was I was having this not necessarily anxiety attack, but like kind of like this is an argument, like an imagined argument with surgeon in my head for the upcoming post-surgery meet. Let's just say if I had an option, I would not have gone with this surgeon, but I didn't have an option because it's the only surgeon that is covered in this province. Ow. So like I wanted it to be all flat, right? And he was basically said, no, it'll look weird because your body is this. And I'm like, well, I want to lose weight. It's like, don't. And he basically said you're not allowed to lose weight, otherwise it'll look weird. And then he did what he wanted, of course. So I basically want to argue, is like, are you going to put in my file that when I lose weight, I need a revision? Because getting a revision is hard getting a revision covered is hard. You literally have to fight for a revision, unless basically mental health is, they won't cover revisions unless it causes discomfort or like pain. It isn't it for that they won't do it for an aesthetic reason. Yeah. And so I just like, I know I had this argument in my head that was just basically was just literally like, the reason why I haven't been able to lose weight with my testicles is because they cause dysphoria by feeling them bounce when I would work out. Then I would stop working out, and now it's like, now I don't have it, and now I'm not very swollen because chest binder, and I see I don't feel a bounce, but I see a bounce because, well, I'm still numb, but I see it, so I was like, I don't know whether it's going to be causing more dysphoria because there's still a bounce. There's still enough flesh to have a bounce. Like, it doesn't look like it does look like a cis male fat guy's chest, and I'm like, okay, yeah, it fits in that aesthetic. Yeah. But like it is like, he basically said right before putting me out, when I said I want to be able to lose weight and have it look normal, and he's like, you're not allowed to lose weight, otherwise it'll look weird. So basically, he's as fat phobic as he is, because I know he's fat phobic because of other people's comments about him. As fat phobic as he is, he's like, you're not allowed to lose weight, otherwise it'll look weird, because I made it so it looks like your chest right now looks good as a fat person's chest, but if you lose weight, it'll look weird because you left extra flesh that will, when I lose weight, it would be hanging. So I basically want to be like, say like, oh, when I lose weight, can you put it in the file that I'll require a revision when I lose weight because you didn't do what I wanted you to do. You just document everything. Yeah, that's basically what I'm gonna be saying. Like, even to the point that I won't allow him to take photos of the results until, because basically he was wanting to do his own thing because he doesn't have a portfolio of his own because he's still new. So he's basically wanting everything to look perfect for his portfolio, but it's not my responsibility to look good for his portfolio. Yeah, exactly. It's not my responsibility to look good for his portfolio. It was like, well, this is what I wanted. I made it clear I was uncomfortable with what he chose for me. Like, he said he would do one thing in the consult and did something completely different in the day of surgery, and basically like overridden my wishes because like I'm very bad at advocating for myself because I have an anxiety disorder, and going into surgery causes more anxiety. And so like I did my best to advocate for myself, but it still was Obviously not enough. I don't have, like, unfortunately, it's in, like, in the paperwork that is attached to my file, I'm pretty sure, because, like, what he said he would do in the consults was as flat as possible, no nips, and he said he would do lipo on the sides, just so everything looks normal. And then day of is like, you don't need any lipo, I'll just leave some extra flesh. I left the consult being like very happy with what he had planned for me, and then day of surgery is like, yeah, I'm changing my mind. It is your fault you're overweight, so you don't need this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the photos I sent you, like, I'm happy with the way it looks now. Like I'm sure once it heals, it'll look fine. It's just the idea that I want to be able to lose weight. Getting the surgery done should help me lose weight because it will allow me to do more intense workouts without having dysphoria of feeling my chest bounce, in theory. But if losing weight ends up making it look weird and not what I want, then that's my issue. He's very much this wanting things to look good for his portfolio is what he wants. Yeah, and that is gonna be one thing I asked. Like, I'll ask because, like, it does seem that there's less fat under my arm, so maybe he did lipo a bit. But like, he basically said, like, I don't need it, so I'm not 100% sure whether he lipoed or not. And he didn't, like, he in recovery, all I saw was my recovery nurse who wouldn't know what he did. So I didn't even see him after, just to kind of go over what all he did while I was unconscious. So that's gonna be a question. Yeah, my brain was just going in circles last night. I don't even know why. I know I've been short triggered it. It just my brain was just like, let's go down this path when you're trying to fall asleep, as anxiety brains tend to go. And instead of just doing that, well, you said this in the past, it's literally, this is what's going to happen in the future. Not movie at all. Yeah. Not the egg face. Hey, Anitaku.
86_VT.
How you doing? I'm just complaining about my surgeon right now. Yeah, our choice of me, to be fair, but that's not difficult. Yeah, but like your top surgery was more mastectomy for cancer prevention. I walked into something spooky. Not so spooky. Just gender affirming care complaints, because my province's health stuff is kind of very meh. Literally only one surgeon to do top surgery, so we don't have the option of looking for good results. Yeah, and like Foppin, you like your surgery was, the way you managed to get it covered was because it was as a cancer prevention rather than specifically as top surgery, which as cancer prevention that they removed everything, but as top surgery they don't necessarily remove everything. They mold it to be more like a cis man's looking chest. So my concern is that when I lose weight, it's gonna be look like I had a radical reduction rather than removal, because I was small to begin with. Yeah, that's like, yeah, that was good, could happen, but like it's kind of was just you guys surgeon who actually wanted to work with you. I had a surgeon who was more specifically wanting to make his portfolio look good, because he is a new surgeon taking over. He's only taking over in the province temporarily while there isn't any other surgeon available in the province. See, I had 2 consults. The first consults was a guy that was well known in the community. Like, he had his own issues. He was but like I literally had a consult booked. I canceled it because he had a medical emergency. I thought the medical emergency was of someone else's emergency that's came up, like a botched surgery or a surgery that went wrong, or pop stitches or whatever that he needed to go back in. Turns out it was his own emergency.
It's great.
But I had to consult with him a week later, and then a week after that I learned on Facebook that he was closing practice. And so the surgeon I got now, is that a crow or a raven? It is a crow. Oh, I just realized who you are, Nikitaku. Welcome in. Sorry, my brain is like, I recognize your avatar. Why do I recognize your avatar? Oh, that's why. I just noticed. I'm very bad with names. I am very, very bad with names. I'm sorry. Yeah. Today is my first day streaming in 3 weeks. Because it's been 2 weeks since I had surgery, and the week before that, I didn't stream. So yeah, it's been about 3 weeks since I last streamed. Ow. My binder is cutting into my armpits and leaving like welts, and it hurts. You know, I found crows. God just like chased down my crows twice. Oh no. I love crows. It honestly, in their minds, it might not have been unjustly. You might have accidentally stumbled into a nesting area without realizing it. And crows do pass on people's faces. Like, they communicate and share what people's faces look like. So as soon as you're marked as you were within range of a nesting area, could still trigger their protectiveness. And basically, crows communicate people's faces. They remember faces, and they'll share that face to other crows. And even if it it could have been in the past that you were in a nesting area, and the crows recognized you and chased you that way. There's a woman in BC who has to leave British Columbia, who literally, like, whenever she leaves her house, she needs to use an umbrella, because that's exactly what happened to her. And like every time she leaves the house, she has crows. If she doesn't have her umbrella open and like just to hide her face, crows will attack. That's exactly what happened to her. But sometimes it's like, sometimes in their mind they have a reason, even if that reason isn't anything that like you specifically did yourself purposefully. But they have a reason that in their mind is this person was too close to the nesting, and they may have seen something that felt threatening, and then they kind of passed it on to friends, and that's what happened. It happens, unfortunately. And to be fair, crows are tricksters as well. Sometimes they just do it for the hell of it because it's fun. They like annoying a person. They're the sort that will like knock. Like, these days, not many people hang their clothes out to dry, but they're the sort that will knock the clothing off of a clothesline to drop it in the mud. And they'll just do it for the heck of it. Or they'll specifically just hang out on a lamppost and just wait to ship bomb anyone walking underneath them. They are very intelligent birds. And rascals in their own right. One day I will be the crazy crow person who has crows following them because I want to start feeding them. And once you start feeding crows, they'll actually start bringing you gifts in return. their gifts are usually like elastic bands or shiny things that they find that they think is pretty. I know someone. I remember a tale that someone who was feeding crows one day they had making a bag of money. There was a tale online about someone who had been feeding crows, and one day that one of the gifts that they brought back to them was someone's wedding band. They have no idea how the crow got this person's wedding band, but it was shiny. Probably backed it off their finger. Probably. Backed it off their finger or did something that messed up their hand and then make them want to wash their hands thoroughly. Waited for them to take the ring off. And stole it off from the stole it from the fountain they were washing their hands off of. Maybe someone just proposed to the burbs. Oh, that would be horrible. Can you imagine someone proposing to their loved one? Crow swoops down, steals a ring out of the box, and flies off with it. That is something a crow would do. I could see it. Well, because I married a burb. Not even married, proposed. Imagine like it's an expensive diamond that just flies, a crow flies off with it. You weren't the one the crows didn't prove. They proved with my ring choice and they wanted it for themselves. I could totally see Nawat's doing that. FYI, Nawat is a character from Tamora Pierce's books. In a series that we'll get to eventually. He is a crow boy. I could totally see Nawat doing that and proposing to Allie. It's like, I found this ring. Someone was just holding it up in a box to someone else, and if they're giving it away, I took it for myself. Just wanted to pop in and say hey. I stay longer next time now. No problem, Nitaku. Thanks for stopping by. Thank you. Have a good evening. Or day, whatever time it is in your neck of the woods. Every time I look at my overlay, I want to get a new overlay. I don't have the funds for it yet. Okay. Blah. Where were we? Right. Okay, we should probably get to reading time. Stop complaining about surgeons. Excuse me. I already finished my beverage I brought up for this evening. I might do a quick BRB to get some more drink because I already finished it. Yeah, it sounds like a good plan. I'll be right back. I am back. I swear I must have a pair of scissors in every room of the house. And like, there's literally 2 pairs of scissors in the computer room right now. I'm like, where did all these scissors come from? It used to be that we always had to search for scissors, which is probably why we have so many now after a move. It's like, now there's like, everything is found. Yeah, I got distracted by Snake. I recently got my snake a larger enclosure, and I've recently put in a bid for another enclosure, which is a little bit larger, which is actually the appropriately sized enclosure. But in theory, I could get something that was 700 or about 150. In theory, if my bid gets through. I don't know how many people are looking at the university's webpage for snake enclosures. So, fingers crossed. Anyway, for a good month, she never left her hide. And So she's kind of leaning. She's kind of overweight. I recently realized I was overfeeding her too, so that's part of the problem. But that's also the problem that she hasn't been moving. And then I was passing her enclosure while I got my drink, and I actually saw her out. I was like, oh, she's actually left her hide. Of course, now that she saw me, she's going back into her hide, but... It's like, you saw me, I must hide. Anywho, we are on the final chapter of this book. I was really wanting to finish this book before surgery, but it just didn't happen. Ow. Sorry, my binder continues to rub up against the welt leaving in my armpits. It causes pain. So, last time in Lioness Rampant, Alana was given a speech to offer John the Dominion Jewel during his coronation. It was along with swearing her fealty as King's champion. King Roger is back. No one but his loyal courtiers knows he has magic. Tom is dying. His magic has turned a rusty orange. But when his master Seachime has come to try help save him, and in that case he's given Alana his magic or a portion of his magic or all of his magic to store until whatever they need to do is done. But in the mean case, she can't use her magic, otherwise what's going on with his magic will seep into hers, and it's not good. But anyway, chapter 8 is about the coronation and everything that comes with that. So, shall we begin? I just realized I forgot to lower volume again of the music again. Sorry about that. Anywho. Chapter 8. Crossroad in Time. The night before the coronation, Alana stayed with Jonathan as he kept vigil. In the chapel of the ordeal, while he meditated on the obligations of kingship, she worried. None of those who had made his protection their goal were satisfied that the single men pouring into the city in recent weeks had come to enjoy themselves. They'd had no choice, Raoul, Gary, the Lord Provost, but to let the coronation take place. So they had every fighting man in service to the palace on duty and alert. Alana attended their talks with John that afternoon, but had nothing to add. The back of her neck prickled constantly, reflecting her uneasiness. But that wasn't solid evidence of trouble. When she and Jonathan reached the chapel, she was pleased to see Raoul had posted a double guard. The night inched by quietly. The only movement she noticed occurred when she or Jonathan changed position. The iron door of the chamber shimmered in the candlelight. a vivid reminder of her ordeal of knighthood. Here, John would undergo the ordeal of kings. The only advantage she could see to his entering that room a second time was that the king's ordeal was said to be short. For herself, she knew that no inducement could get her to enter that place again. Suddenly, the light shifted. The Dominion jewel danced in the air in front of her. So real looking, she had to touch the pouch at her waist to make sure the jewel was in there. She stared, wondering if this was a glimpse of the future, or something of the jewel's making. The false jewel shimmered and grew, coming closer until it overwhelmed her eyes. Inside it, she saw... Excuse me. In the center of the chamber of the ordeal lay... Sorry. Blah. In the center of the chamber of the ordeal, Roger lay on a block of stone. He got up and held out his arms. "Come, loved one," he whispered. She had been warned not to speak or scream. Her jaws knotted to keep from yelling her fury. She couldn't move. Closer he came. She bit the inside of her cheek to keep silent. Coppery blood flooded her mouth. She was in his arms, and they danced. His face lit with love and with rage. His sapphire eyes insane. "We'll dance until the end of everything, my darling, my pets," he crooned. "Promise me we'll dance forever." She shook her head, struggling wildly against his grip. She opened her mouth and clamped it shut. She was forbidden to scream in the chamber of the ordeal. She was in the chapel once again, her hands tight over her mouth. Luckily, Jonathan was in some kind of trance, unable to notice her antics. Slowly, she lowered her hands, trembling. What did today have in store? When the first rays of sun slid through the high windows of the chapel, the priests came. Jonathan rose to go with them, still in a trance. Gently, they conveyed him to the chamber and ushered him inside. Alana tugged at her earbobs, trying to think of nothing at all. When the door swung open 15 minutes later, she was the first one there to catch John, as he had once caught her. He smiled at her tiredly, murmuring, "Not bad, if you like our deals." Alana bit back a laugh. Gary came up to take Jonathan's other arm. They helped him to his rooms, where he could sleep for a few hours. A sleepy wave, Alana parted from Gary and went to the nearby chamber that had been prepared for her. The last thing she saw as she drifted off to sleep was her gold-washed mail, glimmering at her from the rack in the corner. In his suite of rooms, Alex of Tiragan sharpened his sword. He was dressed in black and wearing breeches. He did not plan to attend the coronation. Testing the edge of his blade, he smiled. Delia of Eldorn fussed with her hair in the mirror. Unlike Alex, she was in full court regalia, her emerald silk with its stiffened skirts rustling as she put last-minute touches on her appearance. "Aren't you the least bit nervous?" she asked, adjusting her hair ornament. "Why should I be?" was the cool reply. "He's thought of everything." "What if Josiane succeeds?" Alex chuckled. "Delia, have you no faith in our champion? We have an appointment today, though she doesn't know it." He held up the sword, his eyes dreamy. She won't let a madwoman like Josiane prevent her from coming. Squire Henrim knocked and stepped into the room. Lord Alexander, I let the men-at-arms into the back quarters near the Hall of the Crowns. They're concealed in the storerooms. Captain Chesley says that Eldorn men have taken their places inside the hall, among the crowd. He bowed to Delia, who smiled. Alex stood, sheathing his sword. He'll be with the men on the dungeon level. Before you go there, remind both captains they're not to act until the signal, which will come after the crown rests on Jonathan's head. After crowning. Understand? The squire hesitated. But surely, he'll be bound to the land. He will use Startle's magic against the Duke. Idiots! Stelia snapped. Do you think Duke Roger hasn't planned for that? Don't question your betters. Henrim bowed, shamefaced. Forgive me, Lady Delia. With a sniff, Delia turned back to her mirror. Follow your orders, exactly, said Alex. If you fail, you will pay. I won't fail, Squire promised hotly. Take the hidden stair, then. Dismiss. The youth bowed. Good luck, my lord, and long live King Roger. Fool. Alex whispered when the door closed. All of them. Of them all, he knew Roger's real plans. He alone knew that those like Delia who planned to steal Jonathan's throne so they could have power were in for disappointment. He picked up his dagger and tested the edge. Now, to work. From her position along the wall near the altar, Alana watched with pride as the Mithran priest and the priestess of the goddess Des, acting as one, blessed the silver crown, and then Jonathan, who knelt before them. She was grateful that her duties didn't call for her participation in this part of the ceremony. After keeping vigil with Jonathan all night, she was sleepy. Somehow, repeated yawns did not seem right for such a memorable occasion. Instead, until it was time to present Jonathan formally with a jewel, all she had to do was stay put and look impassive. On her left, Gary and Raoul did the same. Raoul winked as she covered a yawn. Unlike the King's champion, the Knight Commander had spent the night in bed, disturbed only by his nerves. She had to admit he may have gotten as little sleep as she had. John's safety today was the responsibility of the King's own. She let her eyes drift over the crowd that packed the vast hall. Morning was officially over. Nobles and commoners alike bloomed with color. She could see Miles and his companions, Elenai, Thayet, Buri, and Rispa, all wearing their finest. The one I wonder is how Rispa, being a thief, got to be in the crowd of nobles, but she picked out their other familiar faces: Duke Baird and Gareth, Sirs Douglas, Joffrey. No, Jeffrey. Joffrey's a different book. And Sasharel. Many wept openly, moved by the beauty of the day and the moment. Halts in the chanting brought the knight's eyes back to the altar, just as the crown was lowered onto Jonathan's head. Immediately it sparked and glowed, the magic of the land reaching down to envelop the new king. People gasped with awe as Jonathan flared with brilliance. They knew the joining of Tartal and king was complete. Smiling, Alana touched the ember at her throat. Jonathan was brilliant with the crown's silver glow, his own magic showing through as threads of sparkling blue. She looked down and felt sick The floor of the chamber was awash in blood-colored fire. "Jonathan!" she yelled as the earth moaned and shook. Sudden pain, combined with the vibration beneath her, knocked Alanna to her knees. For a moment, she could only clutch her belly and scream with agony. It receded, then flared again. In the hall, chaos reigned. From the vaulted ceiling, mortar, dust, and chips of stone fell, an ominous hint of the destruction that could occur. People screamed in fear as the ground rolled underfoot like a ship at sea. Lana was deaf and blind to it all. The pain was grinding. She felt as if every nerve in her body was being pulled out through her skin. "Tom!" she realized, struggling to get up. "Something's happening to Tom. I can feel it. I have to go to him." "Guard the king!" she yelled to Raoul, lurching to her feet. Faithful was at her side as she hurled herself out of a nearby door. Running as quickly as gold mail would allow for her brother's quarters. Pain ripped into her again. She bit her lip to fight it and stumbled on, determined to reach her twin. Strong arms caught Alanna from behind, helping her along. She looked up into George's eyes and fought to smile. He was dressed as one of the king's own. "What is it, darling?" he asked. They never hesitated in the long strides that took them up the stairs to the second floor. "Tom," she whispered. "He's being attacked. Earthquake is magic. It's the color of Tom's gift. All blood red." "Blood? But it is purple, like corrupted," she gasped as they flew down the hall that led to Tom's rooms. "Turned blood color." "What color would purple and orange make?" George asked as they came to a halt. "Roger's gift, and the Trebond gift." Alanna felt even sicker. Inside Tom's parlor, the air was heavy, almost liquid. The light was greenish yellow. Alanna froze, wary. "What is it, lass?" George whispered. He was tense, feeling the menace as she did. She fumbled at her waist, taking the pouch off her belt. "The jewel!" She pressed it into his hands. "You have to take it to John." "What was I thinking of to carry it away from him?" "George, please." The pouch was lost in the thief's large hands. "Alanna, I can't be leaving you." "You have to," she cried. "I can't use it. John can. I have a feeling he'll need it." George hesitated. A second shock made the ground shiver under their feet. It was over as quickly as it began. Grimly, George stuffed the pouch in front of his tunic. "I'll get it to him. Never fear." He kissed Alanna swiftly and hard, then ran for the Hall of Crowns. Miles saw Alanna go, protecting his head as tiles broke free from the arches overhead, shattering in the main aisle. Jonathan flared with the white and blue lights. He was invisible in the fires of his gift and the crown. Doors leading out of the hall were jammed with fleeing men and women. As were the great city doors. Helena stood, her face deathly pale. "Not the land," she whispered. "Not the earth itself." A flutter of movement in the rear of the hall crowns caught Barry's always watchful eye. A man stripped away his cloak to reveal a nobleman's purple and black livery, and a short crossbow. He brought the weapon up fast, aiming for Jonathan. Murray yanked a throwing star from her belt and flung it, killing the bowman. "There's an attack!" she yelled to Miles. "Warn the king!" Miles' seat was on the great aisle. He was halfway to the altar in a second, moving fast for a plump man. At his warning shout, both Gareth and the provost joined Raoul to form a protective circle around the king. The king's own broke into squads. one forming an outer circle around the nobles, the others moving into the crowd to attack the enemy. Both circles parted to let Miles through to Jonathan's side. "Miles!" John gasped through the magic that obscured him. "What's going on?" "Men in Eldorn and Tirlagan colors are attacking anyone who can fight back," Miles said grimly. "And they're trying to kill you." "Where are the earthquakes coming from?" Jonathan shook his head. "I don't know. As soon as I get a chance, I'll try to find out." "Where's Lana?" "Gone," the older man said. "Something called her away in a hurry. George followed her, and Karam followed George." "She has the jewel," King whispered. "And where is Master Sicham?" Miles was wondering the same thing. In Tom's chambers, Alana was suddenly weak, as if something tugged at her gift, drawing it away from her. Steeling herself, she closed her mind to whatever was trying to drain her. Forcing herself to move, she searched for her twin. It was in the bedroom. Bad as the air in the parlor felt, this was worse. A weight pressed on her lungs. She checked Tom's vital signs. His pulse was shallow and fast. He was cool, alarmingly slow after weeks of being too hot. When she grabbed the ember stone, Alana saw only a trace of his gift, streaming away from him, much as her own had tried to do. She reached past the barrier she set on her magic, determined to use it to save him, no matter what the consequences. Tom's eyes flew open. He gripped her hands with the last of his strength. "Don't! I'm bound to him. He'll drain you through me." "Roger?" she whispered. Tom nodded. She spotted her cat. "Faithful, go for it." "No time." Tom snapped. "Listen." He didn't relax his bruising grip. "His gift, attached to Sorcerer resurrecting him." She put her ear close to his lips to hear. "It got stronger as he did." Tom smiled. "Never as strong as mine." She wiped away tears, growling, "Who cares if your gift's bigger? He can drain only one at a time. You're bound to me. You'll have some of my gift. Some of his, too. He needs more to finish what he began. Don't let him get it. Don't use gift. Leeching spells." He gasped. "He'll take all. Leave nothing." Tom tried to laugh. The result sounded like a horse barking. He didn't get all mine. You have parts." Sinking back, he pulled her with him. His voice was barely audible. His hands cold. "Of you. Always have. Always will." "No," she rasped, but he couldn't hear. "Never know how he did it." He was gone. Near the staircase leading to the ground floor, George found Karam. "I saw her go, and ye after her," Lana's oldest friend gasped, catching his wind. "I figured you'd need help." George showed him the jewel. "She forgot she had this. I'm to carry it to John." "What of her?" with Tom. Karam hesitated. I'd best reach her, unless... I'll keep the jewel safe, Georges reassured him. It's not that far to the hall. It's far enough. Claw and 5 of his men materialized from the gallery behind George. My friends said you'd come this way. He stretched out a hand and beckoned. Give me the swag now, before I get your blood all over it. He glanced at Karam. This ain't your fight. Clear out. Karam hefted his broadsword, his face grim. She'll never forgive me if I run out on ye now, he told George. George tucked the jewel into his belt purse as he unsheathed his daggers. For Spa or the Lady Knight, he grinned. All his men fanned out, forming a half circle with George and Karam at its center. With the stairs at their backs. Both, replied Karam. He leapt forward to engage a ruffian, crying, For the Lioness! Pandemonium ruled in the Hall of Crowns. Other men at arms tore off cloaks to reveal purple and black, or green and white liveries. They were heavily armed and had specific targets. The men of the king's own. Any nobleman fighting back. Jonathan and his guards. Their opponents were high-born and wealthy men with flimsy dress swords. Unarmed common-born men using anything that could serve as a weapon. Even some ladies and children. Many others tried to flee, adding to the confusion. Bury could see a noble woman, including the imperious Duchess of Naxin, imposing order in their vicinity. More men-at-arms poured in through the drapery hidden entry behind the altar, taking the men around John by surprise. Raoul yelled a command and ran forward with the guards in the outer circle to engage the new attackers. Bury couldn't see Liam, Karam, or Alana. Beside her, Rispa had palmed a large dagger and was advancing on an unsuspecting enemy archer. The Khmeri girl was torn. Her first duty was to protect Thayet, but she was also a warrior, trained to act in situations like this. Thayet solved her problem. Give me your sword. We have to do something. Bury glanced at Elenai as she obeyed Thayet. The older woman moved into a pillar's shadow, unraveling the intricate embroidery on her sleeve. She broke off a long thread and smiled at Bury and Thayet. Don't worry about me. Fixing her eyes on a group of archers near the altar, she began to tie knots in the thread, her lips moving silently. Bury wrestled a long-bladed pike from the rack of weapons on the walls. Lowering it to an attack position, she launched herself at a clump of men in Eldorn colors. The first one she engaged back away from her charge. He stumbled. Bury lunged for the kill and lurched as the ground leapt and rolled in a third wake. 3 men in Tiragan colors raced up the stairs to aid Claw, as George and Karam dispatched 2 enemies. Claw himself stayed back, screeching orders and awaiting his chance. George lost a dagger in a throw, killing a Tiragan guard. Karam killed a rogue and wounded another. The men around them shifted, seeking better positions, and George took the offered chance. He lunged at Claw. The one-eyed man swore and lashed out with his knives, panicked dealing with George himself. The thief armed his left hand with an extra blade, making Claw sweat. He didn't have the eye or the nerve to fight two-handed. Frantic, he slashed and cut wide-armed, leaving holes in his guard that George deliberately ignored. The bigger man toyed with Claw, spinning him around, raking his flailing arms, taunting. One of Claw's lucky cuts caught George on a cheekbone, another on his chest. Stop playing, George. The Tiragan guard faltered. Karam slew him with a murderous slash and fell back, gasping for breath. For a moment, he was safe. The two remaining enemies, one Tiragan, one rogue, focused their attention on the rogue and his rival. When he saw no one else would interfere, George settled into a fighter's crouch. Beckoning the claw, he said grimly, "It's us now. The succession must be settled. Fight, Ralon, or Claw, if you've the belly." His single eye rolling wildly, Claw looked for a way to escape. There was none. He'd always known he couldn't beat the rogue on his terms. He tried to for several minutes, throwing his cunning into the battle. He kicked and hit, trying to be unpredictable, but George had been weaned in such tricks. For a moment, they locked knives, pressed together body to body. Then Claw dropped, George's blade hilts deep in his chest. Alana didn't know how long she sat, holding Tom's cold hand. She was certain somehow this was all her fault. How was she supposed to live without her brother? Without her other half? Faithful got her attention finally by latching onto her leg with claws and teeth, kicking ferociously until the pain aroused her. "What are you doing?" she screeched. "Wake up, King's champion," was the angry reply. "You have no time for this. He's going to rip the earth open." Alana knew she couldn't escape her responsibilities, although they'd never meant less to her. Gently, the grieving night kissed her twin. She walked out of the bedroom, drying her face with her handkerchief as fresh tears ran. "Where's Sicham?" As if in answer, the old man staggered in, clutching a bloody right arm. Alana grabbed a towel and swiftly bandaged the priest before he lost more blood, fighting brief nausea. Zicham's right hand was gone. Without the rough tourniquet he wore already, he would be dead. "Don't use your gifts," he warned as she worked. "Brandy." Alana handed him a bottle and watched as he gulped its contents. Rage was replacing her grief. She wanted to act. Nursing the old man was not the action she craved. Zicham put the bottle down. "I am a fool." His voice was stronger. "Never challenged all these years, thinking I could not be bested. It's not enough I pay for my folly. You will, too." Gripping the table with his left hand, he met Alana's cold eyes. "Open your mind." She stepped back. "Why?" "There's no time to explain. You waste what time we have. You don't know all. You risk disaster." "Do you doubt me?" he whispered. "I made a mistake. Because I didn't make two, we are alive. You cannot make even one." She closed her eyes and let him in. 100 bits of knowledge struck her at once. Gate of Idram, the gate for magic, to drain it into the gate's master. My hand. He uses it to steal my gift. Jonathan, gift Vizier, desert magic, to toil land, crown, jewel. He alone can bind the earth. Follow the secret way. Image of deserted stair to the ruined temple in the catacombs. Not all Roger's power stored in Tom. Some with Alana. Stay out of gate trap. Image of white whirls and loops. Leeching spells. Give King all he needs. Send King, Alana, Tom, Roger's power to hold the land. He didn't ask. She never would have let him do it if he had. He sent Alana's gift to Jonathan, using it as a bridge to link minds with the new king. For an awful moment, Alana was 3. Herself, Sicham, Jonathan. The blood-colored fire of Roger's gift beat down on the priest's defenses, seeking a way to enter and take the magic forming around John. Suddenly, the last of Alana's magic was gone. The link broken. Sicham broke the link so fast that Alana was thrown into a faint as the fourth earth shock struck. Earth shock began. The nobles encircling Jonathan fought off another large group of attackers that had come through the door behind the altar. Miles was taking a second breather when he saw John lift his hands. Purple fire swirled around the king's arms, clinging like a skin. The light of the crown that bathed him darkened, drinking in the amethyst gift. A third fire flowed over John's head and back like a hooded cloak. Miles shuddered at its brownish red color, the color of dried blood. He singled out his next opponent when the ground yawned and bucked under their feet. The fourth quake. The shock lasted a full minute, ending as abruptly as it began. Huge chunks of plaster and stone broke free from the arches and roof, crushing several people on the floor. The enemy soldiers were frightened but disciplined enough to hold their places. Their ferocity increased. The quicker they slew the king, the quicker they could escape this death trap. Sweating, George turned away from Claw's body. 5 men wearing all darn green and white had come up the stairs while Karam and the others watched his fight. Now Karam had retreated to the wall of the gallery. George went to his side, grabbing a sword from a dead man as he did. 5 more soldiers in Terlag in purple and black ran up along the gallery to block any chance of escape. Someone must have smuggled him into the palace, Karam gasped, cutting down a Terragan fighter, and brought him into the city wearing civilian clothes. George hurled a dagger to kill a man at the rear, keeping 2 more at bay with his sword. At least 12 others closed them in, and no help was in sight. I promised my lass I'd get her jewel to John, he told himself grimly. Thief I may be, but I've never broken my sworn word. Karam swore and faltered. Lad, a scratch. The man-at-arms gasped, pressing his free hand to his side. For a moment, they thought the earth was shaking, but it was only a sound, a feral roar. Echoing down the gallery, Karam grinned. Finally, he gasped, before attacking his present assailant with renewed energy. Liam Ironarm threw himself into the battle with a ferocity that made even George speechless. There was no following the dragon's movements as he lashed out with fists and feet, striking down any man who opposed him. There was no question of any of the men attacking George and Karam. Landing a blow on the Shang fighter, 6 enemies broke and ran. Liam hurled himself after the last of them, his foot catching the running man just above his shoulders. He went down. Aranam returned to George and Karam as the thief tied a rough bandage over the wound on Karam's side. The man-at-arms grinned at Liam, dark eyes glittering in his sweat-soaked face. You're late, dragon. Liam smiled grimly. I was delayed. Where's Lana? Back there. George said tightly. By now he wondered where she had gone. I have to get the hall crowns. Reaching into his purse, he brought up the jewel. For a moment, Liam stared in the direction George had indicated, clearly wanting to find Lana. Then he sighed. The jewel's the important thing. Let's go. Aram didn't even speak. He had a feeling his night mistress was no longer in Tom's rooms, and that he couldn't follow her down the path she walked now. Together, the 3 men set out at a trot for the Hall of Crowns, George supporting Karam. Alana came around slowly, her skull pounded with the force of her rage when she remembered Sicham had stripped her of her gift, loading it all into Jonathan. She did not like the Mithran's high-headed way of ordering her life. She had planned to tell him so. Rolling onto her stomach, she pushed herself onto all 4s. She felt sick and empty, far worse than when Tom borrowed her gift to bring Roger back to life. Faithful's yowl and Sicham's scream alerted her to danger. The old man struggled with someone at the door. Alana grabbed a chair, dragging herself to her feet. A double-headed axe chopped down, fading deep into Sicham's collarbone. He dropped. Josiane stood in the doorway, spattered with his blood, trying to work her axe free. "Why didn't you blast me, old fool?" she panted. Alana knew the answer, although she refused to tell the princess. If Sicham had taken that chance, he'd have been open to Roger's leeching spell. He'd broken the link to Alana and John for the same reason. Roger would have taken his gift unless he concentrated on his own defenses. Now Sicham was dead. He and his gift were forever out of Roger's grasp. Josiane freed her blade and stepped over the old man's body, smiling. "He told me he'd be here," she explained. "He said he didn't think I could take you, but I was welcome to try. You aren't doing well, are you?" She inched forward, ready to pounce. Maneuvering for room, Alana tripped over a footstool. Josiane darted forward, her axe high. They'd forgotten Faithful. Screeching, he flew into Josiane's face, clinging as she howled and dropped the axe. "Stop, Roger!" the cat ordered as Josiane gripped his small body. The princess hurled him down and stepped with all her might. With Faithful's agonized cry, strength poured into his mistress. She crouched and lunged, drawing lightning as she moved. A single, brutal slash, she cut Josiane down. Her new strength pounded in her ears as she shoved the dying woman aside to pick up Faithful. "Time to go home," he cried, and was gone. Gently, she placed him on a table. Her fingers shook as she unbuckled her sword belt, letting it in the sheath drop. With lightning gripped in her hand, she walked out the door, heading for her last conversation with Duke Roger of Conte. Hiram, George, and Liam arrived in the Hall of Crowns as the fifth quake began. This time the fighting halted as everyone waited to see if the roof would come down. The stone floor of the chamber rolled and shuddered like the deck of a seafaring ship, throwing more than one person to the ground. The crowds were gone, most escaping through the city's doors. Only the combatants remained, each involved in his or her own separate battle for survival. Duke Gareth, Gary, and Miles were all that was left of the circle guarding Jonathan. Raoul and several of the king's own fought desperately to stem the flow of Tiragan and Eldorn men coming from the chambers behind the wall. The provost and more royal men-at-arms contained a rush of enemies from the main aisle. Liam quickly appraised the situation and grabbed a pike, going to Raoul's aid. The danger of a breakthrough was worse. Hiram joined the men around John, setting himself for a long morning. Buri, streaked with dirt and sweat, saluted him with a grin before she and Thaya attacked a cluster of archers. He saw Rispa guarding Elenai, just as he saw several groups of enemies struggling against the invisible ropes George's mother had bound with them with. George thrust the jewel into Jonathan's hands and turned to become a part of John's protective circle. The king closed his eyes and reached out with his mind, gripping the jewel tightly. He called all his magics, his own gift, the Bazir desert sorcery, the power of the kings in the land of Tartal that was bound into the crown, the magic of the Dominion jewel, and he threw them over the length of the breadth of Tartal, feeling the earth's pain as if his own body were being shattered. Like an ancient tree sending out its myriad roots, he bound each crack and fault with sorcery, stripped the whole to him, and held. The crown, dedicated to the realm for centuries, blazed. The jewel shone even brighter than the crown, and the battles raged in the corridors of the palace. Jonathan was part of it all. his vision reaching everywhere. Being the voice the tribes had prepared him for such a confusing moment, when someone else might have been driven mad by the consciousness of each person, animal, tree, and stone in the realm. Jonathan was able to encompass it, to set the greater part of it aside. With a bit of his awareness to guard it, his chief vision focused on a small, copper and gold figure traveling through the bowels of the castle. The ground floor, the level below Tom's quarters, consisted of public rooms, the Hall of Crowns, salons, libraries, ballrooms, the banquet room. Alana bypassed it on one of the 100 staircases without hesitation, her mind and will fixed on the catacombs. Next was the level where everyday businesses took place. Healers, tailors, laundrywomen, scribes, armorers, quartermasters, and map makers all worked here. Today, this level was empty. Alana's feet made the only sound. Next were stores, endless rooms filled with every imaginable supply. This level too was silent. The dungeons and guard rooms, the third level below the ground. She heard fighting, but the way to Roger that Sicham had shown her was a safe distance away from it. Here, the shock that Jonathan had contained found her. She waited after its halt, expecting another. It never came. But the ground shivered continuously, shifting slightly from time to time. Pieces of the ceiling hailed down. The staircase began to exhibit tiny cracks to lose small pieces. John stopped the big quakes, the mother shakers, she thought. But how long can the palace, or any building, take this constant stress? Down Alana went, her eyes blazing in her tight face. She halted once to wipe sweaty palms on her shirt. Then she gripped lightning afresh and moved on. The length of the stairs increased as she descended. They were broken up by landings, the guardroom off each landing. Since the stair she followed was little used, the guardrooms were shut. Now, approaching the catacombs on the 4th level, she found one blazing with light. She halted a few steps above it, considering her options. Perhaps the occupant knew she wanted no more delays. Alex of Tiragan, silver mail glittering, he stepped out onto the landing. Alexa, shut up. Sorry. His unsheathed sword rested on one black hilt of his hand. Just you? I never thought you'd bring others. I'm in a hurry. Her eyes sparkled dangerously. Get out of my way before he tears the palace down around our ears. Shapes moved to the stair below the landing. 2 big men-at-arms in Tiragan purple and black. Your lordship, one rumbled nervously. She's panicking, Alex snapped, his eyes not leaving Alana. Hold your positions. He indicated the lit room with his blade. Step inside, Lady Knight. There's more space. She hesitated, looking from Alex to his men. She wanted to scream with rage or blast them with her gift. She walked inside. The furniture had been shoved into a second chamber. Branches of candles lit the main room. Aren't you gonna have your friends watch? The only witness I need is right here. He touched his temple with a gloved finger. You can stretch first, if you like. And lose more time? No. Alex tried a few lazy passes with his own sword, taunting her. I've waited for this chance. Exasperated, she snapped. You're crazy to want to play best squire in a moment like this. Alex moved into place. Both swung their weapons up to guard. Think what you like. He attacked savagely, his calm face a violent contrast to his rapidly spinning and slashing blade. Alana blocked repeatedly, hiding her dismay. After the draining of her gift, she was a touch slower than she needed to be, against an opponent with whom a touch of slowness made all the difference. She fought with her brain, carefully maintaining her defense, watching for Alex to make an error out of his need. She circled, lightning flowing to stop Alex's blade each time he thrust or cut inward. High, low, either side. She caught his eyes shifting away from her shoulders. Like a novice, he was plainly searching for an opening. She smiled grimly. No one ever wins fighting defensively, Alex snarled. I'm not the one obsessed with winning, she gasped, her voice cracking. Alex faltered. Alana whipped her blade in a reverse crescent. He blocked, jarringly, almost too late. She clenched her teeth and swung immediately into a crescent. As Alex's sword rose to stop lightning, Alana whipped down into a vertical butterfly too fast to watch, scoring lightly across Alex's middle to bite into his shoulder. The grate of sword on mail made her wince. She swore for letting her preoccupation with Roger make her forget her opponent's armor. She lunged back to get away from his countercut. They were back to circling as the fanatic gleam deepened in Alex's eyes. Lioness grabbed her free hand dry, then gripped Lightning's jewel-studded hilt with both hands. Now it was her turn to attack in a series of harsh, downward chopping blows meant to cleave Alex from crown to soul. He blocked, retreating until he lunged forward to lock swords, body to body. As she strained under his downward pressure, Alex snarled and kicked her in the stomach. Alana yelled and went down, rolling to keep out of his way as he sliced at her. Gold mail crossed her shoulders, grated, and she clenched her teeth against the bruising pain of the impact. Ignoring it, she flipped up into an upright stance. Alex lunged in and she countered blindly, lightning extracting another screech of metal from his armor. He retreated. She lunged. They exchanged a flurry of blows and blocks, neither gaining an advantage. From the corner of her eye, she saw his men-at-arms had disobeyed his orders to keep their positions to watch. A breath too late, she saw the complex pass he'd begun. Lightning flew out of her grip into her corner. Behind Alex, he leveled his sword, point at her throat, smiling tightly. Say farewell, Lioness. She edged back. An honorable opponent will let me get my sword and continue. He shook his head. I learned what I need to know. You were good, I admit that. But I knew I was. She moved in a burst of speed. The little she'd kept back. She leaned away from his sword, her left foot curled up and in, then she thrust out, slamming into his belly. Alex crashed into the wall. He got up and threw himself at her with a yell of fury. Liam had taught her only a few kicks and blows, making her practice incessantly. She could not beat a Shang warrior of many years, but her own speed and the endless repetitions caused what she knew to carry the weight of a fully trained Shang. As Alex charged, she swung out of the way and kicked again, throwing him against the same spot in the wall. He lunged once more, cross-cutting with a speed that she could not dodge, slashing across her cheek and her bare right hand. In a split-second opening in the path of his sword, she rammed forward, crushing his windpipe. With one fist, as she struck his nose with the other, thrusting bone splitters deep into his brain. They were pressed together so tightly she felt the life flee his body. She backed hastily away, letting him drop. Is this what it means to be the best, Alex? He would never answer. She seized his blade and spun, determined to finish the guards. But they had fled. Alana retrieved Lightning and set off again, down again. She hadn't gone far when her body reacted to the killing. She vomited over the stairrail for long moments, heaving dryly. She shook with exhaustion. Her treacherous knees threatened to give at every step. She was scared that the stairs would give way under their constant earth tremors. In spite of everything, she forged on, lightheaded, her jaw set. The remaining distance only seemed endless. She reached bottom at the rear of the catacombs. She had chosen to go the proper way. Had she chosen to go the proper way, she would have entered several hundred yards from her present spot, at the foot of the gently sloping ramps leading from the palace temples to the tombs. Rold and Leanne's burial place, newly plastered and decorated, was somewhere near that entrance. Alana had emerged by tombs 300 and 400 years old. Someone had thoughtfully lit the torches. She followed the vision Sicham gave her, ignoring her growing terror. The tombs ended, opening into a great stone floor. In its center, a large, circular design, apparently of white sand, was drawn. As many curls and loops and whirls dizzying to see. On its edge, near her, was a splash of still wet blood. Sicham's, I bet, Alana thought as she gulped back a surge of bile. This was the variant of the Gate of Indaram, normally used to summon elementals. Just a spell to drain off the gift from anyone unfortunate enough to step into it. This was also the spot where Sicham lost his hand. Behind the gates was an abandoned structure. Legend said it was a temple. Roger lounged there against a fallen pillar, arms crossed over his chest. The air around him was filled with bloody fire that glittered evilly. In his back, evilly on its black silk robe. He smiled. I knew you wouldn't disappoint me. You took longer than I had anticipated. Lioness prodded one curl of the gate with a sword to find the sand of the design was melted into the rock. White heat flashed up lightning's edge. She yelped, pulling the blade away. He was scrutinizing her. Suddenly, she knew why. The knight spread her hands with her old, reckless grin. Didn't you know, Roger? I'm giftless. There's nothing for your gate to take from me. His eyes narrowed. How did that? Sicham. Now I understand. That's why your earthquake spell hasn't succeeded, she taunted. John's stopping you. He's got the jewel, the crown, my gift, even magic I bore for Tom. Which means he's stopping you with some of your own gift. He shrugged. Oh, that's why I didn't have enough to bring this comedy to an early finish. It doesn't matter. It does matter, she snapped. There are no more chances for you, Roger. You've bought an ugly death on Trader's Hill. When it's over, I personally will scatter your ashes on the winds. You think I left any of this to chance, dear one? I had a long time to plan. You see, I wasn't quite dead when they buried me. She opened her mouth to deny it, but he shook his head. If we had time, I would explain a powerful working called Sorcerer's Sleep. For your purposes, I was dead. For my own. His face was bleak, terrifying. Then he waved the mood away. I planned carefully because of you, sweet Lioness. Too often escape me. You and my kingly cousin. He studied well, better than when I was his teacher. Where he got power that smells of the deserts, I suppose I shall never know. You saved yourself from my gate, but you're tired. Come within my reach. He smiled and picked up a blade lying beside him. It was blood-stained. I need only to lop off a small part of you, as I did to Sicham. That bit will give me a tie of your inner self, and thus a clear road to Jonathan and the sorcery he wields. Lioness paled and stumbled back a step. Roger put down the knife to walk to the rim of the gate. You have grown so prudent. It may be you won't allow me to that easy a way. Tell me then. How long can Jonathan last? Forever! Lennon threw at him like a challenge. Perhaps. He stepped into the gate as the energy whipping through the design tugged at his robe. Silver glittered against black. The gate's design was duplicated on his clothes. If Jonathan masters no other sorcery against me, and all those who might make a difference are accounted for, I need only to wait. He came forward until he stood at the gate's center. The earth has her own means of dealing with unbearable pressure. She sheds it, redistributes it, expends it in small tremors. When she can do nothing else, she convulses, and continues to do so until the pressure is gone. Even the gods cannot stop such an earthquake. Jonathan holds the land, but the pressure of my spell remains. How long do you think until that inescapable convulsion begins? Lana felt cold and alone. He'll be just as dead, she croaked. His smile was frightening. Indeed, I hope so. She gripped her sword, measuring her strength against his. Why did you tell me any of this? Because, Lady Knight, you will share it with me. Do you think I would end it without you? He chuckled. I'll tell you a secret. Years ago, when I was your age, just finding the limits of my power, I took up jewelry making. To each thing I made, I attached a bit of my gift to mark it as mine. Necklaces, rings, sword hilts. I even forged swords to create a masterpiece of a weapon. Why you had to corrupt my design is beyond me. It was warped. You would think so. He reached out, red fire eddying around his fingers, voice soft. He said, with silver and stone I made thee. With gift and blood I bound thee. With my name I call thee. Lightning jumped, straining towards Roger. She had still carried his original sword instead of melding it with lightning for a whole blade. She would never have kept hold of it. As it was, enough of the crystal blade and its hilt remained to wrench her arms as Alana gripped it. Her cold eyes met his. It will come to me, eventually, he said, and you will follow. All her muscles knotted. Scars on her palms broke and bled. She dug in her heels and held. What can I do? She thought, despairing. I can't make even one decision he hasn't anticipated. Can't I make a decision, even one decision he hasn't anticipated? What does he think I'll do? The cold part of herself that stood aloof from everything whispered. He expects you to fight. So, stop fighting. The teeth-bearing efforts, Alana levered the swords back and let go. The effect was like loosening a bolt from a crossbow. Released from her pull, the sword shrieked as it flew, making her clap her hands over her tortured ears. Roger didn't break his calling spell. He didn't even seem to know what she'd done until lightning buried itself within his chest. Roger grabbed the hilt. Amazingly, he laughed. He laughed until his dying lungs ran out of air. The silver design in his robes dripped and ran to the floor. His eyes closed, and he fell. Flames sprouted from the gates into the stone, devouring the body of Roger of Conte. Buri found her there. With the help of the king's own, she brought a fainting Alana to the surface on a stretcher. Revived by the warmer air on the ground at the ground level, Alana got Buri to help her walk to the Hall of Crowns. She was sickened by the bodies and evidence everywhere. Clearly, the assault had been heavier than anyone had expected. Men of the palace guard admitted them to the hall with deep bows, and Buri waited silently as Alana took in the scene before her. Between quake and uprising, the hall was in ruins. The city doors hung from their hinges. The stone risers had buckled and collapsed in sections. Pieces of roof and arches had fallen, dragging banners and garlands down to litter the floor in a mockery of a holiday. Survivors hunted the rubble, freeing the trapped and pulling out the dead. These were placed on the main aisle for burial. Only later would the bodies in Tarakan or Eldorn colors be separated, to be burned on Traitor's Hill. The provost limped over, brushing heavy silver hair back from a sweat-streaked face. "Not as bad as it looks," he said in his terse way. "More of them dead than us. They weren't expecting much opposition." His ice blue eyes caught Alana's, held them. "You take care of your end of things?" She grinned wolfishly. He grinned back. Buri was interested to note more than a slight resemblance between them in that moment. "Indeed, I did." Just pausing here for a moment to kind of like touch on that moment. It's not that she and the provost are related in any way. It's just the provost is Tamara Pierce had mentioned that the provost is kind of figure like based on her own father. And that was just kind of that connection between the two. Yeah. The provost put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Good." Pausing, he added, "Your friend, Cooper, he did well today." Bearing a wounded leg, he returned to help the searchers. Hill and I, looking worn and old, bandaged her bruised and wounded son. Seeing Alana, George winked and blew her a kiss. When his mother scolded him before moving, he silenced her with a hug. Ayette, seeing the direction of his look, waved tiredly. She sat with her head on a noble woman's shoulder, a shattered sword on her lap. Her new friend was as exhausted and battered as she. Rispa fussed over Karam nearby. She also kept a sharp eye on Delia, who was bound and gagged with strips of what looked like someone's petticoat. Noting Alana's look, Rispa grinned. "My lady over here thought she'd knife his majesty, while the fighting was thickest and the menfolk all occupied," she explained. "She didn't figure she didn't know I figured her game." Gary, sporting bandages of his own, kissed Alana swiftly. "Father had a heart attack," he said quietly. "He'll be alright, thanks to Duke Baird. They're at the infirmary now. Baird and father and Miles. Miles fought two of them single-handed." Gary smiled, tiredly. "They were huge. I don't know what possessed him, but he killed one and George finished the other." "As a mercy to the poor man," George explained as he joined them. after Miles hurt him so. He cupped Alana's face, his brave hazel eyes searching out her own. He nodded, liking what he saw, and kissed her gently. I'd watch out for Miles. He's that fierce when he's angry. Didn't even want to go and get his wounds stitched. Lucky Duke Baird insisted. We can't have Miles terrorizing the prisoners. Softly he added, He's fine, lass. The ladies saved us all, Gary went on. He indicated Thayet, Ilinai, Buri, and Rispa. They kept the archers from killing His Majesty. They're proud of them. Of you. He glanced at Alana and looked away again. His eyes troubled. John, the king, told us what you did in the catacombs. He saw it all. Somehow. Alana faced the altar. Jonathan sat at its base, leaning against the stone. His face was drawn. She was shocked to see white threads in his hair where none had been that morning. Jewel was in his lap. He stirred. Jeffrey Meron gave him a cup of water. The altar itself had been cleared to make room for the body of Liam Ironarm. Did I know? She asked herself. Did I suspect? There was no way to tell. She climbed the altar steps to look at the dragon alone. 8 arrows were piled beside him. His knuckles and wounds were neatly bandaged. Her eyes burned, but she was cried out. Helplessly, she plucked at his sleeve, wishing she could bring him back. Crying would have helped. He and George saved my life. They saved us all. Jonathan dragged himself up to lean on the altar. He'd just gotten to Roger when Terragon soldiers attacked me in force. Miles was down by then. Duke Baird, Raoul, Duke Gareth. They're alright. I guess Raoul will have a limp to show for it. Karam and Gary were drawn away. I was helpless, he grimaced. You did more than enough. Her broken voice was barely audible. But I couldn't do anything else. George and Liam kept me from being interrupted. Alana shuddered, knowing the land would have shaken itself to pieces if John's concentration had broken. 2 archers got clear. Liam took the arrows meant for me. He didn't even falter until the last. Jonathan's eyes met hers. It isn't much consolation, I know, but they'll be thinking about the dragon's last fight for centuries. After a moment, he added, I'm sorry. She tried to walk away, her weakened knees falters. George caught her instantly. It was the death you wanted, King said. He'll honor him, always. Alana nodded dumbly. John reached for her. There was a flash, and a tiny ball of reddish-purple fire leapt from his fingers to her own bloody ones. Gently, he took her hand and kissed it. We did it, King's champion. Tartal is safe. Epilogue. Heralds went out to explain to the people what had happened on Coronation Day. There would be no weeks of celebration that year. Tartal needed time to mourn, repair, and rebuild. Instead, the new king planned this festival to mark the first year of his reign, on the anniversary of Coronation Day. Afterward, he would travel through his kingdom, the first such royal journey since his grandfather's day. Those found guilty by the courts of law of taking part in the rebellion lost their lands and wealth. They and their families were sent into exile. Cordelia, the only living ringleader. The courts decreed life imprisonment. The sentences for all should have been death. The laws on treason were strict. But Jonathan would not begin his rule with executions. He granted more pardons in the first week of his official reign than had King Rold in all of his. A week after the funerals, the king found his champion in the catacombs, seated on a bench and gazing at the blackened gate of Idram. Lightning stood there, pressed into the center of the design. The blade was streaked with soot, the jewels of its hilt cracked and blackened. Jonathan gripped the sword, trying to free it without success. "It's alright," Alana told him. "I don't want it. There are other swords, and I like lightning right where it is." John released the weapon and looked at his filthy hands. "Good. I'm just thinking, will you please get away from the gate? You make me nervous." The king shrugged and came to sit beside her. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated a moment before saying, "Would you mind if I went to the Bloody Hawk for a while? I just need time to think. I'd like a rest." She smiled. "I've had a busy year." "Take all the time you want," John assured her. I know where to find you if there's need." Alana to George Cooper, Baron of Pirate Swoop, written in late July. "So, John has put you to work finding the last of the Coronation rebels. I'm not surprised. It is very quiet here. Tell Miles I have enough sleep at last. I miss you." She entered into the daily routine of the tribe, hunting lions with the young men and hearing the legends of the Bazir from the shamans. She took her turn at sentry duty, enjoying the quiet and clearness of the stars. Shortly after her arrival, Alana saw a new constellation at the foot of the cluster called the Goddess. She never found out who named it, but everywhere she traveled in later years, she always heard it called the Cat. Young people came from all over to meet the woman who rides like a man. Most were youths, but an occasional girl visited as well. Many of the boys were headed north to join the King's Own. The girls planned to try their own fortune, most of them as fighters. In the second week of October, Layette and Burry came to the Bloody Hawk, escorted by a squad of the King's Own. Alana was glad to see them, now that the edge had worn off her grief for Tom, Liam, and Faithful. It wasn't long before Alana began to wonder if Layette had come to talk about a particular subject. Whatever it was, she couldn't bring herself to discuss it for days. Instead, she talked about the school she'd begun with the help of Miles, Eleni, Carrie, and George, or the midwinter weddings for Miles and Karam, and Alana's doings. She met Alana's friends in the tribe and tried her hand at weaving. Burry joined the girls, who shocked the elders by studying warrior arts. When she showed them Khmeri trick riding, she drew the young men, uniting the two groups in their eagerness to learn. "I'm glad we came," Layette told Alana a week after her arrival. They sat in front of Alana's tent after the evening meal. From the central fire, they could hear Burry teaching her friends a rude song about the city dwellers. "She misses the excitement of the road," the princess added. "She's a lot like you, in a way." Alana massaged her palms with a wry smile. "If that's so, she'll find other things to challenge her. She won't be able to help it." She paused and decided to see what was up. "You aren't here because you wanted to give Burry a holiday, Layette. It's a long ride just to say hello." The princess looked away. "Jonathan admires the Bazir. He let me read their history. He thinks the Khmer, the Doi, the Bazir may be descended from one race, though the Bazir are more cousins than the direct line. Not yet, Alana sighed. The other woman nodded her handkerchief. You wanted me to know everything about you, and about it being over. You said I should have the story straight. Her voice was soft. But I have to wonder, because you and he are so close, still. Alana took the handkerchief away before her friend could damage it. We always were close. Long before we were lovers. I imagine we'll always be close, but not in the same way. We're friends, and I'm his champion. But everyone seems to think when you come back. Everyone? Alana wanted to know. I think someone doesn't think that at all, or he wouldn't spend so much time with you. Diet whispered. If I hadn't come to Total. Alana drew a design in the sand. Nonsense. I wanted you to be safe. We all did. And I knew you'd make a better queen than I would. What? Yelped the princess. Jonathan needs someone who will treat him like a person, not just a king, Alana explained. I can't. I'm his vassal, for all I am his friend. You were born and reared to be royalty. He doesn't frighten you. You won't let him turn into a prig. You won't let him be smug. She hesitated, then said, I was hoping by now you'd like him. You're my friend, Ayat wailed. You can't take your man. Alana hugged her. He isn't my man. He is yours. If you love him and he loves you, I want you both to be happy. I prefer you were happy with each other. She wants what? Sorry, I don't know when that message came in. Let him become a prick. Oh yes, yeah. Yeah, he had turned into a bit more of a prick. Come Sandri. Not Sandri. Why did I say Sandri? That's a completely different world. Kel's time. Or even before that, when his own daughter wanted to become a knight. I think it was less of an instant turn into a prick than kind of just slowly happened in time. You know how things go is people just give way to it rather than like not give way so much as just kind of like make excuses and just like this is why blah blah blah, this is why blah blah blah. It's just kind of like that slow thing that some couples do with each other is just like to make excuses for themselves to accept how they become. But less of an instantaneous prick as he had turned in the third book with Alana when they broke up officially. Diet Swift sniffed and wiped her eyes. I probably look like a hag. Alana grinned. Don't fish for compliments. It isn't becoming. A watery chuckle was her answer. I was so happy and not having to go through a marriage estate. Well, that was before you met John, so that's alright. Now that she didn't have to worry about upsetting her friend, Diet wanted to hear about Jonathan when he was younger. When That subject was exhausted. She told Alana the changes she hoped to make to Indortal. Hurry arrived. When Thiet stopped for breath, the Chimera said, "That is not me she's talking to for a change. People in love are boring." Thiet made a face at her companion. Much later, she and Alana lay in their bedrolls. Thiet whispered, "Alana, is there someone for you?" Alana blinked, suddenly watery-eyed. "I don't know. He'd be very unconventional, I know. Like..." Thiet sighed. "Most men would panic if they thought of marrying a lady knight." Alana finished. "Someone that's like that would bore me silly. I've been very lucky with men." She fingered the ember at her throat, wondering where George was. "Then you'll be lucky again." The next morning, Alana was performing her Shang exercises when she heard a sentry's warning whistle. It was answered by two others, and then a whistle sounded to mean no danger. She picked up her sword, wanting to check anyway, when a woman behind her said, "It's me they're whistling about." Alana spun and stepped back into a fighting stance. The wiry female now in front of her raised her hands to show they were empty. Her tightly curled hair was more gray than chestnut. Her eyes were pale in a tan, weathered face. On her gloves was a Shang globe surmounted by a bristling cat. "The reflexes are all right," the wildcat said, her voice light and dry. "Do you expect an attack, even now?" Alana lowered her sword. "I've had an interesting year." "Huh." Liam's master examined her carefully. "So, you were his last pupil. He thought you could be one of us, for all that you're too old." Alana looked away, afraid she might cry. "Come up on the ridge with me. I'm just passing through. You can see me off." "You've come a long way to just pass through," Alana said, her emotions under control again. She followed the wildcat up to a ridge that commanded a view of the southern road. The older woman stopped to stare across the desert, lines deepening at the corners of her eyes. Sorry, I'm hearing my mom yell at the cats. Oh. "I want to tell you I'm sorry about Liam. I wish I could have prevented it." The wildcat waved her explanation away. "You have to understand Shang, Lady Knight. We all know that we risk an early death. Any guest or suspected." "He wrote me from Chorus the day before he was killed." One sec. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. That cats were really annoying my mom. So well, the one in particular. So she brought him up to me and closed him in the room with me right now. Where was I? Any guest or he wrote me from Chorus the day before he was killed. If he got lucky, I was to forget it. If he didn't, I was to give you this. She put a folded and sealed parchment into Alana's hands. Alana saw the older woman's eyes brim with tears. The wildcat gave her a tiny smile. "I love him more than my own sons." It's good to know he used his death well. Opening the parchment with hands that shook, Alana read. Kitten, knowing you think it's your fault I got killed when I did. You're thinking if you hadn't dragged me along, forget it. Remember the Doi woman, Michi, saying I knew my fate? Years ago, a Doi told me I'd know when it was the Black God's time for me. I think this is it. If I'm wrong and I live, the Wildcat will burn this letter anyway, so you won't find out that I wrote this. Don't blame yourself. When could you ever tell me what to do? I chose my life. I accepted dragon rank, knowing no dragon has lived to be 40. As it is, I'm the oldest dragon in almost 100 years. The truth is, we never saw death the same, like some other things. So I didn't talk about it with you. All you think of death is ending. To me, it's how a person goes, dying for important things. That's better than living safe. I often visited Tartal, though we never met there. The last 2 times, the first before I found you, the second when we sailed into Port Kane, I felt a change. Like the lands when spring is coming, Azir talking to northerners, not fighting them. Commoners and nobles planning the future. Even you, my kitten, your great disguise, is part of something new that centers around your Jonathan. I can protect this beginning. I will have died a dragon. You should grow old and testier, and raise lions and lionesses with a man who loves all of you. Even your gift, and your independence, and your stubbornness. Practice the kicks off your left side. I don't care if they tire you out more than the right side kicks. Remember to rub that balm I gave you into the scars on your hands. The Wildcat had gone while she read. Glad to be alone, Alana sat and wept. Letting the dragon go at last. Ayet and Buri left a few days later. Alana started to think about her own trip north before the roads turned bad with winter rain and snow. Since she was trying to weave a blanket for George's midwinter presents, she decided to set out when it was done. She was working alone in her tent one afternoon when a shadow blocked the light on her work. George Cooper, cloak. One sec, cats are fighting. Okay, back. George Cooper, cloak and riding boots, covered with dust, entered the tent. Alana put down her shadow. She could feel her heart drumming, and it took an effort to say lightly, I was sort of hoping you'd come before this. He sat beside her, examining the cloth in the loom. I'd hoped to come before this too, he admitted. Truth to tell, giving up the rogue and turning respectable, it takes getting used to. Some days I get out of bed not knowing who I am. Jonathan kept me busy, like I wrote you. 2, the castle down in the old pirate sloop had to be fixed up proper before I brought... He stopped. John's announced he's to marry Thayet, he said abruptly. The Vizier will have told you. It's one of the advantages of having a king who's also the voice. His face It'd be easy to read as his back was into the light. It says you gave your blessing. I did. She curled her hands around her elbows to hide their trembling. You're not sorry for it? Had you wanted, you'd be queen. I didn't want it. He reached out to toy with the Emberstone. What do you want, Alana? She caught his hand and met his eyes, smiling. I want to be yours. If you're still interested. His fingers tightened on hers. Why? Alana looked down. I love you. He made her look up at him. Enough to wed with me? Enough to give up Roman and settle down and be the lady of Pirate Swoop? She looked at him quizzically, and he blushed. Well, to room with me along. Alana nodded. George took a breath. Enough to bear our little ones? She blushed. I'd like to have you to myself for a year or two. After that, we'll have all the children we want. Her voice cracked as she added, I'd be proud to. Rising, George pulled Alana into his arms. So I finally tamed myself a lioness, he whispered when they broke their kiss. Alana laughed. I wouldn't call it tamed, laddie me love. The lady of Pirate Swoop shouldn't be tame. George grinned, particularly not when she's king champion to boot. That's alright then. He picked her up for another kiss. When he finally put her down, he took her hand and drew her out of the tent. Come on, Lioness. You can tell your tribe we're betrothed. And like that, it is done. Song of Lioness is done. This romance part is so cringy, but I'm feeling flustered by proxy. It wasn't even too lewd. It wasn't even too lewd of a romance. It's just kind of like, I like you. Do you still like me? Will you have me? Will you have my children? I'm more flustered by the fluff. Dude, I was like, "Yee, cool." See, are you really Arrow then? If you're flustered by the fluff? Tease. You want some babies? You don't want to fluff at me. Gross. Not perceive you. Ow. Rawr. Tell each other you like each other spicy. How dare they? Okay, so that is it for this series. We will move on to the next series of the worlds, Portal universe, which is Bralidane's series, the Immortals Quartet. we'll keep that to Monday evenings. I'm off still after surgery for the next 3 weeks, so I'm gonna try figure out something of a stream schedule. Stream schedule, not scream. My voice is already dying. I do not need to scream. No, we can still play It Takes Two tomorrow. Yes. Yes, we can do that. I mean, like, other than tomorrow, I'm just thinking of during the days. I'm getting bored during the days. As long as I can get sleep at night, I'm usually like awake and not knowing what to do during the day. So maybe doing some afternoon streams would be good. I've been playing some games on my own, like Borderlands 2, some Elden Ring on my new stream deck, but I also have to kind of like figure out what's going on with my stream deck too, because there's some things that are just being like not working the way it should. So I'm just gonna figure that out as well. But other than that, I have my entire like gaming setup downstairs fairly the way I want. Eventually I'll move it back upstairs where it should be. Cats. But yeah, I'm gonna try I'll try get some Final Fantasy in. I've been prepping it slowly to do that, so we'll see. Anywho, you could drive me around, yes. Yeah. I need to remember how to be heals and DPS and deeps and all that. Lovely Mechanist, nice, yes. I need to get back to the lovely Mechanist as well. Hi, kitty. Hey, Becca. Hi, my precious. Yeah, my poor Becca has been suffering with the new cat. She's a mix of aggressive towards the new cat or scared of the new cat, and keeping to herself and only enjoying my presence in odd occasions. Anywho, that is gonna be it for me today. Tomorrow evening we'll do some It Takes Two with Foppin. And I will figure out It Takes Two, yay! Yeah. Unless you're not up to it. But we'll figure something out for these 3 weeks. Maybe get some of the Slay the Princess in. I poked at it a bit, but my system kept freezing and my Steam Deck kept freezing and shutting off on me, so I got some weird ending, but after that, it's just kind of like, yeah, you finished the game. You don't need to play it anymore. Freeze. So it's a game. Yeah. I got a weird ass ending. I guess it was kind of like a neutral ending, I would say. It was a very, very weird ass ending as a first ending. I'll say that. The game didn't continue. It was probably... No, it wasn't a good ending. It was... It was the princess had fractured into multiple princesses and then got molded together like clay. So they were both dead and alive. So it's kind of like every other possible ending kind of merged together, even though some of those endings didn't necessarily happen yet. Yeah, it was a strange ending. I made two chapters. The first chapter, world ended. Second chapter, it was like, you can't at all make the same choices you did the last chapter. Stuff got weird. Is in second chapter, basically. Second chapter was narrator forgot everything that happened, but there were now walls around the entire area. Yeah, it's a question. Like, it was like, didn't this happen already? It's like, I don't know what you're talking about. It didn't. You just got here. Yeah, I'll maybe make that the first ending that I play on stream, so you know which one I'm talking about, but how strange it is. So I know exactly the options I took, although I might take a different staircase. Let's see how this different staircases work. See if it leads to a different ending of the same. So I ended up having to play the ending twice to get all the achievements for it, because my Stream Deck froze right at the very end of it, and I didn't do any. There wasn't any you have to manually save, so there was no save file to it. So I had to do it a second time to get all the way through. And it was just like, I had to do all the same options over again just to get where I was, because it was like, I got there, so I should see it through to the end. That was fun. Anywho, I'm gonna jump off. And we can continue chatting on Discord. I'm tired of speaking aloud. The speaking aloud for like the complaints about Surgeon was good. I feel like I'm not allowed to complain because it's like it's already happened, but like it's not like I could have just said, like I could have just said, no, I don't actually want to do this with you, but then I wouldn't have been able to do it at all. So I know, it's just kind of like, I get complaining is fine, but it's also kind of like, it has to be just particular people. Like people who will understand the complaints versus just like, kind of like, versus like my mom. She wouldn't necessarily understand. It's like, it would maybe feel like, so you're regretting it. It's like, I'm not regretting it. I'm just wishing I could have had a different surgeon. I mean, and then like, that's kind of why I went the no nipple route. So I didn't, it wasn't a regret by disappointment. I mean, in some ways it is disappointment, but it's like a different sort of disappointment than I was expecting. So I was like, if I gone with the nipple route, I know from what other people were talking about him is that he doesn't resize anything. So it was like, even that would be like a big no to me. Hey, no. Down. Hey, down. Sorry, my cat decided to go on top of my computer tower. I wasn't yelling at all of you. Honestly, if you had a good surgeon I knew did good results, I would have gone with nipples. But not knowing this guy's results and some things I've heard about him was, and like even the other surgeon I had a consult with, that he trained under, the new surgeon trained under, like he was like, he's a baby surgeon. He was just learning from the surgeon I had originally chosen. But I think if we had the option to go into Montreal, like the gender clinic in Montreal, which is where all the bottom surgery across Canada, like that's the only place they could get bottom surgery at. It used to be that you could get, it used to be that's where you got top surgery as well until they opened it up to surgeons in local provinces. But it has to be low. But so like once they opened that up, they basically said Montreal clinic isn't an option for top surgery anymore. If it was an option, I probably would have gone there. I would have been happy with my results. I probably would have gone the nipple route, as I coined it, because I know the surgeons there are really good. But it wasn't an option, and I guess now that there's a way that like you could technically fight for it. There's no guarantee that Manitoba Health would accept it though, because there is an option in Manitoba right now, even though it's not the best option. And as soon as he stops covering the last of the list, I'm not sure whether he's even staying in he's pretty sure he's not staying in Manitoba at all, so he'll eventually move to Toronto, back to Toronto, in which case we'll not have a surgeon at all. And that's when we'll probably have the option to going to Montreal. But I have no idea how long that would take for things. Anywho, I've talked your ears off long enough. And you can continue. I can continue talking about it later too. I'm gonna end it here, as Poppin apparently is going down. Anywho, keep your minds out of the gutters, peeps. Have pleasant dreams, and a very good night.